ClusterLogic is a very simple tool, and is just a clicking tool. Click, 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 and everything is done for you. Obviously, you should know what to click. So we did already an analysis in ClusterLogic. Now we are going to display some data and display what is the meaning of select files, because this is a way to be able to visualize where the cluster are. You can see if I click the cluster gets displayed on the screen, but sometimes the cluster is very small, so you're not able to see. So what we did, we hide all the data so we be able to see the cluster. We have the same functionality here on top of the screen, and you can use this in exactly the same way. So you hide the data, and this is hiding the data for the selected, and this is hiding the data for all the files. And again, is getting back. Sometimes it's very useful to be able to remove the cluster, and remove the cluster from the selected, hide all the cluster selected, or hide the cluster for all the files. So in this case, we click, and you can see that the cluster immediately disappear from your data. Another useful tool is to export this cluster. So we can export one by one, and even if we select two, we can export together. So we set up to use the phenotype name, and we want to export one cluster for each selector. So here we export these two clusters of the CD4 and CD8. So we click, and we export the cluster of the CD4 and CD8. Now, this tool is very useful. So we delete whatever we built. This tool is very useful, but is working very well when you have just one file selected. So here we have one data set, one file selected. And if you work with only one file, we will be able to perform a lot of operation. For example, we can backgate our cluster. So we are going here and say we want our CD4 positive. We did an extraction with 10%, so very quick extraction. And now we want to verify the gate for this extraction. If we follow the cluster to understand what we get out of this cluster. So there are a couple of ways to do this job. One way is to build your gating strategy and say I want parameter FSC, SSC, CD45, TCRB, CD4, and CD8, or just click build. And this is what I like to do always. I'm clicking build, and I get directly my extraction, and this is my cluster, the result of my gating strategy from the cluster. All my gates should be adjusted, but this allowed to the user to verify the clusters. So we can see here we extracted 6,900 for our CD4, and here our CD4 is 7,000. Now, if we go here and we display our CD8 and CD4, we can see that the population are very similar. Probably not exactly the same, but very similar. So we have to display in the same way. This is with the gate, and this with the cluster. After we did this, we go back to our cluster, and we have multiple options. We can say that we want to get this cluster used as a fingerprint. So every cluster has a fingerprint that is built according to the statistics that is in each parameter. And this can be very useful to identify the cluster. Again, we can export all this table, and we can add whatever we have here to our global. For example, if we select these two and we add to the global, when we go to the global, we will have these two added, appended at the end. And then we can use these two to analyze our data if we want. Thank you very much.